Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be going over something kind of difficult. We're going to be going over the king, bishop, and knight checkmate versus king, and I'm going to be showing you a slightly different method than what most people show you. Most people focus on the quickest way or the most correct way to checkmate with the king, bishop, and knight versus the king. My goal is more of a practical thing. If you actually get this position in a game, you want to be able to do it quickly. And by quickly, I mean you don't want to have to think about your moves for any length of time. You want to get a pattern that you can follow, and you want to make sure that that pattern is relatively easy to follow. Because if you get this in modern chess with our shorter time controls where you're going to be playing a game in 2 hours or you're going to be playing a game in 60 minutes, you're not going to have a lot of time left if you actually do get this position on your board. And you're going to have to checkmate your opponent in pretty short order. And not in terms of moves, but just in terms of the amount of time it takes you to do this checkmate. You're going to have to do this in usually a couple minutes or less. So the technique that I'm going to show you is kind of a technique that it's partially a technique called the W method. Which is a well-known technique. I personally learned it by reading Lasker's Manual of Chess. It's known as the W method. You can look it up as the W method if you want. And I'm also going to add kind of my technique to it, which I call slamming the door, which I think is a fairly unique approach to solving the king, bishop, and knight versus king checkmate. For me, anyway, it gives me a pattern that I can hang my hat on that makes it a little bit easier to solve these positions and makes it a little bit easier for me to find the moves. Now, this method isn't going to be the most efficient. From this position, for example, you should be able to checkmate in 28 moves with perfect play. We're not going to do that. We're probably going to checkmate using my method. We're probably going to be about 4 or 5 moves inefficient. We're probably going to checkmate in about 32 to 33 moves. And that's fine. You know, you've got a lot of wiggle room for the 50 move rule in these positions. So the goal is just to get a pattern that you can recognize and that you can play easily. So I'm going to show you my method. I call it slamming the door. Okay, so it starts off bishop d3, king e7, and then knight f3. Now this is the critical part of my method. The first step of my method is you build a wall. Okay, you build a wall and you make black pay for it. Okay, we've heard this before, right? Okay, so we're building a wall. Okay, so that's step one. So basically, if you want to nail down the steps of this method, step one is you're going to build a wall. Step two is you're going to slam the door. Okay, so you build a wall, you slam the door. Step three is the drive. This is where we begin the W method. Okay, so first off, the knight uses its W maneuver, and then you go into 3 different patterns within the drive. I call them the letter T, the diamond shape, okay, and the net. Okay, and again, the difference between my method and other methods is they don't typically name these patterns, but I'm naming them. I'm giving you names that you can hang your hat on so you can remember them. Okay, so this is the wall. So basically the knight and the bishop, they hang out 2 squares apart and they build this wall. Okay, and the bishop is covering this diagonal and the knight is offering its support. Okay, now the bishop and the knight, they don't work together very well, so when they build a wall, there tends to be a lot of holes in this wall. Okay, so if you look at this wall, I want you to note the weakest side of this wall, which in this case is going to be the left side of this wall or the queen side of this wall. It's the weakest part of this wall that black can get through. And that's actually kind of a good thing, because in order to checkmate with the king, bishop, and knight versus the king, you need to get the king to one of these light squared corners. In this case, we're going to be exclusively checkmating in this light squared corner up here. Okay, so we've got to get him over here if we're going to get our checkmate. That's our end goal. So we'd kind of like him to go to the weakest part of the wall, because if he does, we can checkmate him a little bit faster. Now this king has a lot of room to run in this area. He can go this way, he can go towards this part of the wall, he can go this way, or he can just kind of go this way towards that weak part of the wall that we're talking about. So the first step is you need to take your king and you need to bring it up towards the weakest part of your wall. Basically, you need to bring it up towards your bishop so you can help defend that weakest part of the wall. And then you're going to take a look and you're going to see, okay, where did his king run? Okay, did his king run this way? Did his king run towards the weak part of the wall? Or did his king run towards this dark corner? and then whichever direction his king ran, you slam the door on him. Okay? Whichever direction he picked, you lock him into that decision. Once you slam the door, you get him to the edge of the board, and then you're going to conduct a drive, and it's either going to be you're going to conduct a drive where his king ends up somewhere in the middle of this wall here, and you're going to drive him to the side. His king's going to end up over here, and then I'm actually pretty lazy. I'm going to drive him up, and then I'm going to drive him over into this light squared corner. If you're more sophisticated, you can certainly drive him down to that light squared corner if you're very, very good at this method. But like I said, usually in a game you're going to have like maybe a minute, maybe less than 2 minutes to do this. It's faster if you just follow the same method over and over. And if you end up slamming him into the wall over here, you just have to drive him up into that corner, and that's going to be how you're going to checkmate him. So I'm going to show you each way to do that. So the first way that he can do this is this king could, in theory, walk towards the weak part of your wall. And then you're going to bring your king towards the weak part of his wall. Okay, and then he's decided to hang out here in the middle towards the weak part of this wall. Boom. You slam the door. Now, I call this slamming the door because the knight and bishop kind of make a door. And then you slam it. You slam it shut. You say, okay, you've decided that you want to hang out over here. You've decided that you want to hang out near this light squared corner. I will slam the door, and that's where you're going to hang out. And now we start pushing him into that corner, and we eventually drive him into that corner for mate. So now king c5, we're going to play bishop e4. Notice how we're continually restricting squares. We're giving him the option. You can go back, you can go to the side, but we're restricting him. So then we're going to have him go back, and then we're going to push him back up like this. So we don't control. This is another annoying thing about king, bishop, and knight versus king. We can't really control where his king goes, but here's what you got to keep in your head. When his king picks a direction, slam the door in his face. That's all you got to remember. Every time that king picks a direction, you slam the door in his face. So when that king goes to e6, now you start pushing him to whichever direction he's choosing to run. King f6, and now what we're going to do is as that king runs towards that dark squared corner now, we're going to slam the door in his face with our bishop. So watch how this works. King g7, king here, king here, king here. We get our king to f6 here, and then boom, the critical door slamming. So notice we slammed that door, we brought it back to drive the king back, and then when the king finally decided to run over this way, we just chased him with our king. And then we slammed that door in his face again. So now the door is officially slammed in his face. And now what the goal is going to be is we're going to drive this king to that corner, and we're going to drive him over into this corner. Okay, so king here, we're going to drive him back, controlling that square. And now we're going to begin our so-called W maneuver. At this point, we're already into the patterned maneuver of what's known as the drive. At this point, it's just a forced sequence of moves that will eventually end in checkmate over here in this light squared corner. So we're beginning what we call the W maneuver with our knight. So the knight goes like this, and the reason they call this the W maneuver is it looks kind of like a W. Is the knight goes up, down, and it makes something that kind of looks like a W or an M, depending on which direction you're looking at it from. So then king goes to h6, we're going to come back up here, and we're going to go here. And now we're going to go into the next part of this pattern, driving him out of this corner, what I like to call the letter T. After the king goes to f8, I think that this kind of makes a T shape. So I'm calling that the letter T. This is all part of a memorized sequence of moves called the drive. So the king heads over, we play knight back to e5. Okay, the king goes to f8. Okay, and then we're going to go into what we call the diamond shape. So the king keeps trying to get back to that dark squared corner, but we're going to continue the drive. So again, I call this the diamond shape. That's easy to remember. So king e8, we chase him, and we get back to the letter T. It's letter T, diamond shape, get back to T. King d8, king over, and then we get back to the letter T. We're back in that letter T formation. King back, we're going to bring our knight back as part of the W maneuver, going for the diamond shape. We go for this diamond shape again. We chase him over, we get back to our letter T. Then all we have to do is maneuver this knight to a6 with check, and that's going to be mate. So this is the maneuver we're looking for because we need to leave that square open for the bishop so we can deliver mate. So knight c5, king here, king there, bishop to c6 mate. And if you were keeping track, we actually just checkmated him on move 33. So even though, for the purists out there that want to do this a little bit faster, we weren't that inefficient. We were probably about 5 moves inefficient using this method of just slamming the door. Okay, we could have done it a little bit more perfectly if we were a little bit more precise. Actually, where we lost most of our moves was back here, where we drove the king into this corner and drove him over there. If you want to be more efficient, as soon as you get the king to this edge, you can drive him to the nearest corner, and that's actually going to be a lot more efficient, okay? So we're not done with this method yet, because if we go back to our critical position here, and we notice that there are other options for this king. We go back to these critical positions, and the king can go this way, the king can go this way. So let's say we make another decision. Let's say the king runs straight to the dark squared corner. Well, this is actually really easy. We can get into our drive a little bit faster. We just slam the door on him immediately, because he went over there for us. Thank you. We're going to slam the door. And then we're going to bring in our king. And then we're going to start our W maneuver. And we just go right back to that drive. Okay, so there is one more part of that drive that's kind of critical. So if I go back to that drive, I want you to notice that here, right before the king goes back to f8, this king has the option to run. So this is the third part of that drive that I was talking about. Let's say the king runs to d8. We need to chase him. We need to chase him using a method I call the net. Okay, so to do the net, just remember king, then knight, then bishop. King, then knight, then bishop. This is how we do the net. So king e6, we move our king first to protect that square. Then we bring in our knight. That controls these two squares. This is critical. The king comes up, and then we create our net with our bishop. And then we close the net, and we get back to the letter T. Okay, so there's a couple different variations on this net, but they're not very different, okay? When I play computers, computers like to bring the king to b7 instead of, just bringing the king to c6 or whatever. And in this case, you just bring the king over to d6, and again, we're going to push him back to the back, and we're going to push him back into our pattern. Okay, another option is instead of the king going directly to, after knight d7, instead of the king going directly to king c6, they could play king b7. This is something that I have, like, people that use table bases will try against me. You bring the bishop back to d3, and then you do have to waste a move with bishop c4, but it's the exact same net. You just bring him back, and you bring him back to d5, and you're back in that net, and you're following that pattern again. So, coming back to our critical position, where this king still has the option to go basically anywhere, We've seen the king go over there, and then we slam the door, and then we get him into our pattern. We get him into our drive, where we've got the letter T, the diamond shape, and the net, and that all ends in mate. And we've seen where he comes over here to the weak part of the wall, and how we control that, how we slam the door, and then we drive him again. And so what if he just hangs out kind of in the back? What if he just kind of does nothing? What if he just says, hey, I'm going to hang out back here? So you bring your king up to the weak part of your wall again, and then you bring your king up to control. Okay, he comes over here. You can't slam the door in his face right here. What you can do is you can push him straight back. And then when he finally does pick a direction, you can start slamming the door. Okay, so if he plays king d6 and he just wants to hang out, you can push him back. Now this is an important formation to remember. The king and the bishop directly in front of each other, in front of this king, controlling either side like that. This always forces the king back. So in this case, we're just forcing this king back directly to this wall. Now again, this can still be a little annoying because he can still pick a direction. He can still choose to try to run this way, or he can try to run this way. So whichever direction he goes, you have to be prepared for that, and you just have to slam the door. So like, for example, king c7, king e6. Great, you picked your direction. Let's drive you this way. King b6, and now these are some of the harder maneuvers, is where you start maneuvering your knight. You have to maneuver your knight, but I'm going to show you a way to maneuver your knight using an easy pattern as opposed to something difficult. Okay, so we're going to play knight to d4, and then knight back here. And just easy way to visualize this. Your king is handling the stuff over here. Your bishop handles the diagonal, and then your knight is handling this situation here. You've got him trapped in this area, and you're going to push him back here. So like I said, the way I always visualize that is it's just slamming the door. Okay, you slam the door in his face and you say, okay, you picked where you want to be. Now we're going to keep you over there. And then we're going to push you back into that corner, and we're eventually going to deliver our checkmate. So then we start pushing him back. And now this is, again, very tricky. You can't do all the pushing with just the king. So you're going to have to use your bishop a little bit here, because the main thing is you're going to have to control this b5 square. You're going to have to control the square that the king is sitting on. So you bring the bishop back, and then you actually use your knight to control b5, because you want your bishop controlling that. That way, if the king comes over here, you're going to bring your king in, and you've slammed the door effectively in the king's face, and then all you're going to do is drive the king from here up to here. And this checkmate's actually going to happen a little bit faster than if the king had run all the way over here. You're actually going to end up doing the checkmate a little bit faster. It's just a little bit harder of a pattern to remember because it does involve more knight moves than bishop moves. So if you're defending against the king, bishop, and knight, I don't necessarily give the recommendation of running to the dark squared corner. I'd say hang out in the middle and then hang out kind of in this zone over here, because even though technically if you're playing against somebody that really knows their stuff, they'll mate you a little bit faster, it does involve a lot more knight and bishop moves to get it just right. So again, if I rewind a little bit, just remember these critical patterns with the knight and bishop. Bringing in that knight to that c2 square and holding that wall there. And also remember that critical pattern with the king and the bishop just one square apart from the enemy king. So again, pushing this king back, and then this, bringing this knight in, and then pushing that king back again, and then bringing in that bishop to control that critical square on a6. The king's not going to be happy. He's going to come back to b6, but then boom, we make that wall again. And this is, we're starting to get back to kind of the pretty pattern where you have the bishop and knight kind of one square apart, kind of controlling that wall. And then we just finish it off by using this pattern again. The king and bishop one square apart from the king, controlling each of the critical squares. And now we're pushing the king back into the edge. He has to go to the edge now. And then we're going to polish him off by controlling that, locking him in with the bishop. Now we've got him between these two squares. Now the only thing left to do is maneuver the knight to that square with check. And if it wasn't going to be check when we got there, we need to waste a move with the bishop. In this case, it is going to be check. And then boom, we've got our checkmate. Okay, now that is my method for checkmating with the bishop and knight versus king. You don't have to use a lot of complicated memorization to do it. You've got to memorize a couple of patterns, okay? You've got to memorize kind of the initial wall, which is the king, bishop, and knight, kind of the bishop and knight kind of one square apart like they are right now. That's going to make a wall. You got to memorize slamming the door. Okay, whichever direction that king chooses to go, you slam the door in his face. And then for the drive, you got to remember your W maneuver, your letter T, your diamond shape, and your net. Okay? This isn't going to be the perfect method. If you want the perfect method, you're going to have to do a little bit more study to make every single move perfect. But this will be a very reliable method. You'll be able to get checkmate every single time. And more importantly, you'll be able to do it quickly. You should be able to get checkmate you should be able to do this in under 2 minutes every single time once you've studied this method. I hope you learned something new about chess. I hope this makes the bishop and knight versus king checkmate doable for some of you that didn't know how to do it. And I just hope this helps your game. Thank you very much for watching.